I've been busy with InvestorDex all week, and now this? I need to do a full line-by-line variance review by tomorrow morning. How big is this file? Look at this. 30,000 rows. Commissions, travel, software, and random office supplies purchases. Covers 5 months of actuals, 6 accounts with numerous transactions. On top of that, a sales bookings to target file and a budget file. It would take me 250 hours if I was to give every line 30 seconds of attention. That's physically impossible. So what we would normally do is pivot the data and have assumptions, but not today. Today, we're going to hand this entire dataset to Gemini. We aren't just going to calculate the variance, we're going to make sure we don't get caught out by missing any details. Numbers are meaningless without any context, so I'm going to upload IRS Publication 463. In this scenario, we failed our audit last year, so we can't afford any mistakes. We need Gemini to scrutinize every transaction against these rules. If you give AI just data, then it's a calculator. If you give it context, it's an analyst. I'm uploading the actuals, budget, bookings, and the IRS rules. We need the full spread including month, quarter, and year-to-date variance. But here's a critical step. I am explicitly forcing Gemini to use a Python Sandbox. Do not skip this. The standard chat models cannot handle 30,000 rows as it can't process it. Python is the only option here that makes this possible. The initial prompt takes a while, so I'm going to speed this part up. First, look at the charts. The story is clear and worrying. Sales bookings are flatlined, yet discretionary spend for mills, software, and hardware is climbing. Our expectation is that if revenue is down, then the variable spend will also be down, but that's not true in the majority of budgets. The executive summary catches the risk immediately. Because we uploaded the tax code, it explicitly flags the 50% deductibility cap on meals and entertainment spend. The variance tables are clean. Month to date, quarter to date, year to date tables with the color coding makes the variance obvious. But high level commentaries aren't enough. These costs are too high to just accept a generic explanation, so we need to enrich this. I'm reprompting the model as I don't just want a summary. I want a full sweep of all 30,000 lines. We're looking for anomalies, errors, and specifically items that are non-deductible. We have to make sure we aren't caught out. At the Modern Lab Finance channel, we don't just look at the latest AI features. We test them to see if they're actually practical for real accounting or FP&A use case. Like knowing that you must force a specific workflow into the Python Sandbox. If you don't, the model fails. I've done the stress testing so you don't have to. As always, the raw data files and these exact prompts are in the description below. Now let's see what the latest prompt found. Now we can see that there have been additional critical items identified. First, the Vegas conference. Gemini identified $92,500 in duplicate errors and explicitly recommended a reversal. That is an immediate concern. Not just the amount, but the fact that these transactions were even posted in the first place. We'll need to check the source system ourselves. Next, the tax review. It correctly flagged the 50% deductibility limit on meals and also identified no-boo expenses. There's around $650 repeat expense, which potentially suggests structuring. Potentially keeping a bill under an approval limit. Also, if the spend is actually entertainment, then the deduction isn't 50%, it's 0%, so we need to make sure we enforce the policy. Then the compliance red flag, ledger hardware. The company does not engage in crypto activity, and a crypto hardware wallet purchased on a corporate card isn't just a variance, it's a control failure that requires immediate escalation. For software and IT hardware, the story is different. There are no obvious errors here, just overspending. This requires a discussion with the VP to understand operational drivers before we can reforecast. And finally, we'll sense check the high-level transaction duplicates for Uber, Starbucks, and LinkedIn. I'm going to pause here and open a raw Excel file to verify the Vegas conference transactions. This is exactly why we can't blindly trust AI yet. Gemini flagged 92.5 grand, but we saw that the total impact was actually 370,000. Gemini found a pattern, but it missed the magnitude. That is why you still need to do your own due diligence, as our AI isn't perfect yet. I'm doing another prompt. First, for the Vegas conference, I'm calling out the error and to check the source and dates. Secondly, the tax risk. Since 82 grand at Nobu is significant, if the IRS deems that it's lavish, then the deductibility is 0. Third, the structuring check. As the $650 round number is suspicious, I want to know if there's a pattern here. And lastly, a transaction sweep to check if those small expenses are duplicates, and a crypto ledger to see if it's a one-off or something systemic. The revised findings are in. The Vegas narrative has gotten clearer. It's confirmed the numbers are significantly higher than the first pass, but the error is strange. It's across 15 different vendors, including our payroll provider. It's likely a system allocation error, maybe a bad copy and paste during the upload, and for now, it's likely reversible. On Nobu, it agrees with our suspicion. The flat $650 repeated pattern aligns with potentially purchasing fixed value gift cards. This is now flagged as a high-risk tax return item and should be treated as 0% deductible until confirmed otherwise. For LinkedIn, Starbucks and Uber duplicates, since their fields don't match, we need to flag this for further investigation. The crypto hardware wallet has also been flagged for escalation, and I'm glad it's an isolated incident. One final step before we generate the presentation. We need to normalize the numbers by instructing Gemini to reverse the 370 grand of erroneous Vegas transactions. Since the Hilton transaction likely was the only real one, I'm adding logic to keep the Hilton row and remove the rest. Now, looking at the corrections that were done, Gemini was able to adjust the spend by 351.5 grand and reduce the travel spend in the variance table. We didn't just expand the variance, but we also fixed it. Now we have a clean number, we can start the presentation output. We need to make sure we have the right narrative for our two stakeholders, the VP of Sales and the CFO. They require two different conversations. I'm prompting Gemini to output the findings for each stakeholder. First, for the VP of Sales, it's a discussion about results and accountability. I need the adjusted year-to-date variance. I need a clear list of discussion points, the tax based on excessive meals, the Nobu structuring, and crypto wallet. I'm having Gemini draft a pre-meeting email to provide context and have a productive meeting. For the CFO, it's not just about the budget, as it's also about governance, risk, and compliance. I'm asking for a strategic summary of the anomalies. The Vegas conference transactions weren't just a mistake, they highlight a control failure. If a 370 grand phantom entry can get through, our process is broken. I also need to flag the other high priority items, specifically Nobu and the crypto wallet, as risks are required to be mitigated. Once again, in just a few minutes, we went from 30,000 line transaction listing and a dense text publication to a key strategic message for the sales VP and the CFO. We didn't just clean the data, we translated it. We will continue to break things and figure out what works best. Please subscribe to the Modern Finance Lab.